Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. It's just one of those days. It's time to record an episode here. I haven't done like a head-on self-improvement episode in a while, and yet the amount of people that I run into daily who need it, want it, just looking for someone to feedback loop with them, do a reflection session, someone who can inspire them, look inside their soul and go, I can see this talent, at least I can see the ambition and the willingness to get the talent. There's not a lot of people out there like that because a lot of people are struggling. And especially with this time, we have a bunch of, millennials with educations, but the challenge is that the skill sets are either too plentiful, so the jobs are not available because they're all taken, and we need more creativity, but there's no mentorship. School doesn't teach you creativity, unfortunately, and it can be taught. It actually can be taught. And it's really kind of getting into exercises that move you from your left brain exclusive execution of what you perceive to be as talent over to the right brain so that you can start becoming an artist with your life. Now, this isn't going to be exclusively anything related to something artistic. And this is going to be the big idea, or thinking big, episode. And there's all kinds of preparations to make sure that just having the concept that you're going to think big, that's the first step. But going and getting it and making sure that you can acquire the talent that you need, the drive that you need to get through all of these different layers that you're going to have to go through and stick with it. It's a big deal, and it's not trivial if you've never done it before. It becomes trivial fairly quickly once you've done it before. It doesn't become necessarily easy. Well, let's say that you learned how to play the guitar from scratch. Okay, you went through hell and back to get there. All kinds. You figure out what style you're going to do. You can do acoustic, you can do electric, you can do metal, you can do country, and then you're going to blues. You got to learn all the different licks. You'll learn that learning a bunch of licks from one style of music is going to feed another style of music. And then you want to go, okay, now I want to learn how to play the piano because I want to start with some piano type music. And so you got to start kind of all over, but not quite. Now you understand music theory. Now generally I need to operate this new thing with so many notes in an octave, so many octaves on a particular controller, full-blown grand piano. And so now you're accompanying your guitar technology that you've learned. But let's say that you can only do repetition of someone else's lesson. I knew that riff from that song. Remember, I could play Stairway to Heaven or whatever it is. But you want to write your own Stairway to Heaven, your own song, your own symphony, whatever. Then you need to have your creative mind. What are you trying to do here? But let's say on one level you're like, well, I don't even care what it is. I just want to feel like I'm being more creative. It could be painting. It could be writing movies. It could be anything. Maybe you just need to do a big, giant risk in your life because you got one more chance. You're young enough to do it, or everything that you've tried isn't working and you understand the definition of insanity, which is to continually doing the same thing and expecting a change. Part of it is, where do you start? And the beautiful thing is that particular answer is actually extremely basic. What life do you want? Do you want to get, you're by yourself most of the time? You want a partner, you want a wife, you want a husband, you live in a particular size house, you want a bigger house. You want this or that, but you design your goal. I know some of this sounds trivial. We're going to get past the trivial and get into the nuts and bolts as quickly as possible, hopefully before it rains. Now, the other thing to remember about goal setting in terms of what you think you want, depending on how many years, days, months it takes to get your goal, who you are by the time you actually get to your goal might actually change drastically. when we're young, we're very impressionable to tangible objects. We want fancy cars because maybe we're following some musician that's got one, the actor's got one. Maybe you're just into cars. You want a gigantic house until you realize property taxes and upkeep and all that stuff. And as you get older, you're like, you know what? I just really need what I need. I don't need all that big stuff. So you may end up changing your mind if it takes a little while to get it. Just understand that about your goal and be excited if in a particular day you reduce the complexity of your goal by reducing your overall need bucket, right? You're like, what if you wanted a Lamborghini? Boy, after I drove one off and on for about 6 months, I wanted one so bad. And I thought it would be, and I knew it was silly. They're, ridiculously expensive. I would have to be making, 10 times the amount of money I make now in order to just blow it off, right? And that's the kind of money I would have to make to buy something like that, because I have all kinds of other things I would invest in first. But, if it was pocket change, then hey, whatever. It's an amazing vehicle. But time went on. Life continued. And I basically kind of renegotiated that in my mind. If a miracle happens, then great, I'll go out and get one. But if it doesn't, I don't need to have a $12,000 a year license plate bill. Actually, I think it's about 1/10 that, but it's, in California, it'd be about $2,500 to $3,000 just to put a plate on it once a year. Nuts, right? So guess what happened? What I have to do to get my goal in life is reduced. Intangible objects are never anything that's on my list anymore. It's all about people and communication and what I create. I want to blow people's minds. That's my goal in life. And I've had a very lucky, successful, hardworking life that has allowed me to do a lot of that. All right, great. But, how do we usually make goals in this world? I mean, what do we do physically when we think about, I got a goal, I got a dream, right? You typically just sit down somewhere and you dream it out. You're on a beach, you're inside your car, maybe you're in someplace you hate, and so you dream about the good place. Maybe you're in someplace great that inspires you to put down your goal, in your brain. But it's extremely important, and I know it sounds old school and analog, but you really need to have your goal printed out, written down. Probably better if you write it down, because that adds a little bit of a personal curve to the whole thing. But put it somewhere where you're going to see it every single day. Maybe in the mirror in your bathroom, because we always look in the mirror in the bathroom. We don't always go in our office. We don't always go in the kitchen. You could keep it in your car, but then it's sort of exposing your goal to the outside world. Anyone gets in your car can start busting your chops on it, and it's a private affair. It's you. Why write it down? Well, in case it changes, you can change it. You can go up and revise it. You can add more, subtract. Be specific. So many times in life I've said to people, well, tell me what you would love to have happen. And they give me a very matter-of-fact answer when I'm doing career management on somebody or life management or whatever. And I said, okay, now that answer sucks. And look at me really funny. And I said, well, if you don't tell me, let's say I'm God, I got the magic wand, I can give anything that you want. You give me some stupid little sentence, then that's all you're going to get. The verbs and nouns and adjectives that you use are extremely important when you're writing down your goal. How do you want this to happen? Any specifics that are missing will be missing from your final product. Imagine someone asking you, who would you like to marry? Okay, boy, girl, doesn't matter. And if you don't write it down, they don't have it. If you don't write down that physique is important to you, well, they weigh 400 pounds. If you don't say that their height is important to you, or you'd like to have them shorter, then if you like them shorter, the woman or the man will be 6'8", and if you like them petite, then they'll be huge, whatever. Write it down. Get your goal defined. Now, once you have it written down, at least in some form, and again, maybe it's a very dynamic thing. Maybe you keep it in a computer if it's really super complicated. That way you don't have to write it out all by hand. But I tell you what, if you did have to write it out all by hand, you would know it more and more and more every single time. You would forget a line that you wrote because it's like writing that I will not throw spitballs at the teacher's head sort of thing. Write that 100 times sort of thing, right? But once you have it, then you can start examining what that really means. Is there 4 or 5 things that are going to make up your goal, or one thing? There is no right and there's no wrong. You determine. You determine everything in that set that will make you happy. Now, you should, if you are spending your life with someone else, you might want to check it out if you got some weird ones on the list. Honey, do you mind living on a boat the rest of your life? Something like that. But the infamous now, Bill Cosby, I mentioned this 2 or 3 times in season 1. There was an episode of The Cosby Show where he went in to teach his son's class, his older son's class. And they played it up like his son was really, ashamed that his father was teaching the class. But Bill just sat back on a chair. And what he said was, he goes, what do you want to be in life? And a bunch of kids in the room didn't have any real definite answers. A couple kids did. But he says, okay, if you want that thing in life, then what you need to do is figure out how many steps it takes to get it. And then you start taking those steps. And of course, you will find out eventually that some of your steps are completed with other steps, and some of the steps actually expand into more steps. Okay. Nice thing is, if you just picked up the football on one end of the field and the goal that you have to make is on the other end, if you can just move it 1 millimeter a day, well, eventually it will cross the touchdown zone. Some days you're going to get a first down. Some days maybe you get sacked and you lose a few yards. But that's okay. It's all part of the process. Do you get better when you do things twice? Oh yeah, that's what's cool. And it's a lot easier usually the second time. But this episode's about thinking big. So we're not just talking about goal setting. We're talking about taking your current frame of mind, which is littered with paradigm limits, past history limits. You believe you have limitations because you've never been able to cross a certain threshold of something. And we want to potentially, maybe not in every area of your life, but in these areas related to your goal, we want to push it up. And the most basic one is, outside of being able to have a talent that you don't have developed, a lot of it ends with, I never made that much money in my life. And for those of you who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, he has a beautiful example that his rich dad, which is his friend's father, who owned a bunch of pineapple plantations in Hawaii, when he caught the 2 kids melting down nickels and making things with it, I can't remember what they were doing, he says, all right, you guys can't destroy money. That's illegal. So I'm going to let you work in the little convenience store I own off one of the highways on Oahu, I think. All right. All the kids did was straighten the aisle, straighten all, pull the things up, make it all flush, day in and day out, day in and day out. And eventually Robert hit his limit. He was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so when he was picked up, he refused to go back. And the rich dad said, great, you've learned your very first lesson. He said, what's that lesson? He goes, you want more out of life, don't you? He's like, yeah. He's a little kid. He was like 8 or 9, 10 years old, something like that. And so he goes, okay, well, tomorrow we're going to start on this next journey where we're going to start to look at what you really want to do. And on the way home, I think I have this right, he says, well, I got a beef with you in one way or another. As a child, he said this. And the guy goes, okay, what's the beef? He says, that lady, she's an old woman, and she's a clerk at that place. I can tell you don't pay her very much. Her clothing doesn't look nice, like she should have, because he really liked her, and her car is a piece of crap. This job isn't, really what a child would even perceive as an adult doing. Now, if you live in Hawaii, it's probably just fine. But he took the opportunity to teach Robert a lesson. And he goes, she makes the amount of money that she believes that she should make. And that's her issue, not my issue. Aha. First thing about thinking big would be to say, you believe that you should be able to do more. Now, we have a little problem with society today. Had that line been said to me in 1985 as a child, I would have perceived extremely hard work going through all those steps that Bill Cosby talked about and doing what we call paying your dues. But you say it in 2019 and you have a millennial who's been taught socialism as a parachute to life. And they're like, well, yeah, you know what? I should be a director of Hollywood movies as my first job. I should be a millionaire tomorrow. Because there's this entitlement thing going on. I don't know how many people watch this show that would actually have that sort of opinion. I tend not to think that. But if you are running into folks like that, or if you know you just have that little bit of a twang in you, the idea is, well, there are steps you can take to jump ahead, for sure. And I'm going to give you one of my personal experiences so that you can see how it's done. One way to do it, right? But when I got into screenwriting and film development in general, you get your ass kicked so fast by people that are so much more talented than you are, you realize that the only way that you're going to get to masterful writing, if you haven't been writing since absolute childhood and you've got this epiphany mind that always seems to drag just diamonds out of the sky, which you have a part of that in you anyway, which is why you're gravitating towards that. But you do have to pay your dues. You have to write film after film after film, your own stuff. Because that reveals a whole lot more than, say, remaking someone else's stuff. Okay, it's not a sin to do either one. But just realize, if you want to be at the tippy top of Michael Crichton world, where you're writing a Westworld, Sphere, Jurassic Park, you're going to have to pay your dues and learn how to do it. And learn how to do it well. Because you could have a great premise, but you can't write story for crap, and your stuff will never get made. So it's a huge process, and it's multi-layered, which we're not going to get into in this one. But I was in the San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. I should say Silicon Valley. I really didn't spend much time in the city proper. And I managed to amass a tremendous amount of success doing database engineering as one of my talents. I knew how to program every single database that was a modern database out there. Plus the product I worked in was super advanced and it could talk to any back end, blah, blah, blah. So by the age of, say, 23, which is 1992, 93, I was probably making $80,000 a year. I'm a young kid pulling down big cash. Now, right now, in Orange County and neighboring counties, you would have to have a PhD and work for 10 years as a teacher to get $80,000. That's 30 plus years later, right? Or I guess 25 plus years later. So by my mid-20s, I was averaging about $85K a year without my site consulting, which was in the video game business. I wrote my own product and was selling it to Fortune 1000 companies. So I had some other additional income as well. But I knew that my 8-hour day job had to make somewhere in the 80s. Here's the problem. Here comes the internet. I'm actually writing internet expansion packages for the product that I'm in, but my core talent is in this database industry. And they keep telling us the whole world's going to go to the internet, and we don't have the languages yet to even do it. You know, that's why Amazon's so amazing, because they were living inside Perl. They were living inside C. It was a rough planet back in those days on the internet. But I'm also an artist. I'm making tons of money on the side, drawing things from company logos to all kinds of stuff. And so I'm like, well, I got to transfer my skill set into the internet. But I'm over here really blessed to have spent 5 years mastering this database engineering stuff. And I don't want to slip a beat. I don't want to especially come home and not be able to pay my bills. Okay. So every day I worked 8 hours. I was a very senior employee at the company. I was managing 2 other people, designing products. I mean, I would do the interface design, draw all that stuff out, write the documentation, write the tutorials, program the product, go present it in front of like 600 people. Plus I was writing my own software on the side and selling that. So I'd work at least 8 hours at the company, come home, and I spent no less than 4 hours a night, at least 5 days a week, Plus, I was making tons of music on the side, so that's where my weekends went. But I must have done this for 2 years, from 1996 to 1998, roughly. Learning how to program Perl, learning how to draw in Photoshop before any filters helped you with anything. Again, I mentioned this once before, but Dr. Ozone was a guy out there that just was a god in Photoshop, man. Now, most of what he has is a click away. So when I first switched jobs into this internet realm, I had to take a hit of like down to 80 grand. From 85 to 80. But I had this residual cash from other things, so I was fine. But I did it. I identified the steps that I needed to take. I identified what was currently at the time called webmastering, which means you were an artist, you knew interface design, and you were a proficient programmer that could do anything. Plus, I had mastered how to program chat rooms, and so I immediately joined a company that specialized in that service for the entire internet. Cool. So I need you, if you want to think big, to understand entitlement gets you absolutely nowhere. What if I just sat at my house and go, well, I'm going to start programming the web at the company, which means I'm a junior coder, I barely know Photoshop, and I want them to pay me this massive salary. Really? Now, none of you would most likely think that, of course. But because you don't think that, we have to identify the steps that are going to get you there. Now, the other thing that is a big deal is the amount of hard work you're going to have to put in to get there. But of course, if it's your goal, hopefully that hard work translates into something we call love. And love makes work feel like play. No matter how difficult it gets, you're still loving it. You know, and I'm trying to work on a script and I can't crack it. I'm frustrated, but I'm still smiling. I'm still loving it. Now, some people say, okay, I get you. I understand. I know what I want. And I'm actually very familiar with the steps I need to take. However, I don't have the time to do it. So I'm just going to concede to what I have and live life. Well, I would say as long as you're not living in pain and suffering, you can do that. But today we know that age discrimination starts about 50, about my age, if you don't have really exceptional skills in something. But they want you to delay your Social Security intake until you're 75. What a joke. What a joke that our government plays on us for retirement. Think about it. Go get a job at 65 and tell me what that experience is like. Go get a job at 70. Go get a job at 73. The people who are those ages today are still struggling, and they got the American dream. You know, they were living in the 80s, in their 30s and 40s, when jobs were everywhere and you were expected to get some sort of retirement plan, some sort of pension. Pension's almost a word that's disappearing, like the name, Nikola Tesla. So no matter how, content you might be with your life right now, society in America is pushing you to reinvent yourself. You must almost, you know whether or not you have a job that's one of those jobs. Maybe you're a union person, maybe you're a teacher. Teachers have it bad up front, but then they have it great in the end because they can work for quite a while, right? Teachers can be pretty damn old and appreciated, depending on what sciences and, teaching that they're in. And that's a great thing. But we're in a world that's different. There are programs launching all over the planet that are trying to get people to understand this. There are, for as much as you might see some, ridiculous climate change thing that's completely fake, go look up my episode on global warming. I'll give you all the science on it so you can stop worrying about it. But the one thing that's really, really important is this sort of life learning thing. You're going to have to be learning constantly. And the interesting thing is that it used to be that you could, what was the advice in the 70s? Your grandparent or your parent might tell you, just learn how to do something, learn how to do it better than anyone else, and then you'll be just fine in this world. And there's still, thankfully, a lot of careers that can still do that. I know a few. But a lot of the careers are going away like that. They simply don't exist, where you can learn how to do something well and da-da-da-da-da. Not so much. It just appears a little bit more into that DNA. Imagine you work on an assembly line building a car. I don't care if it's a Tesla or a Corvette or whatever. Well, it takes physical prowess to be able to do these jobs. Stand up all day, bend over a little bit every day, hook a wire here, do this there. Because we are demanding for retirement purposes, which, again, your Social Security doesn't pay any of your bills, really. But because we're demanding that people work until they're 75, well, the body gives out before you're 75 if you're in a physical labor thing, which is why a lot of people gravitate to unions that provide pensions in addition to Social Security. Well, you can tell why unions appeal to people. But a lot of folks have those same requirements, but they don't have anything to protect them. And so they're sitting there waiting to break as a human being. And so depending on your health, depending on, your environment, what you do for a living, you may need to beat a haste to some other career where you can get your butt in a chair. And thankfully, management is a really great natural sector to go into if your company respects management that has senior knowledge. A lot of companies nowadays, they look at your salary requirement and they're like, okay, we can hire this dude right here or continue this guy's employment or girl's employment in their 60s and 70s. But you know what? They drive a Mercedes now. They have grandkids. They've got whatever, a bunch of financial requirements, and their salaries are now already over $100,000 to $200,000. All right. Or we could hire a 30-year-old person, migrate someone up inside the company that's already done a little bit of the work, shows good mental aptitude. We could spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in training for that person, get them up to the level we need them, and maybe even beyond some of the wisdom of these older folks, and replace those older people. We've also talked about, the age of robots coming in. So physical labor is going to be most likely replaced by robots. But, robots still have touch points with human beings in them, so you may be able to learn a new skill. But look at the Amazon warehouses. Oh my God, there's almost no human beings. These robots go around, pick stuff up, bring it up to the front. Then they can push it into a box, label it, get it out the door. It's tremendous. Scary for some folks. The reason why the arts are so powerful for human beings in this world, no matter what you do, meaning something creative, is that artificial intelligence is not going to be released in your lifetime that will be able to do anything super creative really, really well, unless you're probably in your teens or 20s and you live a long life. You live to be 80 to 100 years old. You'll probably see it. But now, and there's some episodes that are very similar to this one. I think it's important to go ahead and put out new ones that repeat some of the information. One, because I'll have a different, more focused take. But two, no one's going back to look at the old ones. And so it's good to throw like a little memory bubble out to the front here. So for the hardcore listeners, there's a lot of repetition, at least in theme, in this particular episode versus old episodes. But now time management is a concept that is usually not recognized in the brain as a personal requirement or a personal skill set. It's usually time management is all based on you go to a corporation and then you have time management inside a corporation, trying to make sure people work, the most hours possible to get something done, Where there's a whole wing of it that's for you in your personal life. And because of cell phone technology and tablets, it's easier to make the example today than it was, say, 15 years ago. But how many of you, whether or not you admit it or not, you go to the restroom, and now the restroom is actually kind of fun. You either grab your iPad or your cell phone, you take it in there, and you catch up on your news, your emails, all your social media, whatever, and it sort of makes the experience just go away. It's like it's not boring anymore. You're not sitting there staring at the wall. You're doing something. Well, before all that existed, yours truly would, it's a little TMI, but I would always use the bathroom experience as a time to do things, especially to learn. I would read books. I read magazines that were educational. I used to write songs when I got my first keyboard. It was fairly portable. I drew my yearbook cover, the artwork in there. I mean, it was a place where a lot of great things happened. It was the only real downtime I had where I was still conscious, right? Because when you go to sleep, well, you're off in la la land, right? But as I got into story writing, the cool thing is no matter where I was, unless I was with other people, but if I was by myself in my car, by myself really anywhere, I could always incubate up something of value. Now, there's some places that you'll tell yourself that you're going to do things of value. You're stuck in an airport for 3 hours. Oh, I got a 3-hour layaway. Well, I'll just get out my laptop and do something. Some of you are really good at that. A lot of us will dream a dream of doing that. And, it's just not the environment. You're into people watching or you're exhausted or whatever. Can't find a power supply, which is actually getting a lot easier these days. But every single split second of your life when you're trying to think big is huge. There's the... Again, I mentioned this guy, a few episodes back, but the millionaire man who's now calling himself the billionaire man, I believe he's an American that now lives in Scotland. He made a really good point during one of his classes, which you can see online. I will put his link down below. And if I ever say I'm going to put a link down below and you look down below and it's not there, leave a comment that I missed it. I'll put it in the comments, and then I'll delete your comment so that you don't have something dangling out there that makes you look dumb, right? You're like, you didn't put it in there, and then I put it in there, and you look like you're lying. Let's just create that little ritual. But this dude said, look, he goes, the difference between, say, you, one of his students, and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos? He said that these men were willing to work out of their office for the first 10 years of their life. Huge sacrifice. And when he says that, he means that. Their loop was so freaking tight. You're talking about getting up, doing a bathroom ritual, maybe kissing your kids and your wife goodbye, going to work, crunching a good 10-hour day if you're getting out early, 12 and 14. If it's a normal day, come home, try to squeeze something out of your relationship, go back to bed, and repeat for 10 years. Now, that's provided you have a good idea in the first place, right? Yeah, but that's a billionaire's regiment. I doubt too many of you listening to me need to be a billionaire. So if that crunches your soul and you're like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I'm definitely not going to go for anything big because I don't want to be working in, maybe you're 45, 55, 65, and you're like, definitely don't have time for that. Don't worry about that. Whatever you're going to put into it, again, think about what I just told you about my career. I put 4 hours in a day after work, and I launched a whole new career at almost the same pay. I took a 5K hit. I got some stocks out of the deal too. I can definitely vouch for my own laziness losing probably no less than half a dozen, I know 3 off the top of my head, which I can't even mention because they're still viable ideas to this day, but at least half a dozen successes that if I had really, really, really quarantined myself, got rid of all my pastimes, I probably would have succeeded with at least one of them in a multi-million-dollar situation. And it's really tough to look back and go, God, man, I should have done that more. I was heavy into music in the 90s and really pioneering some new sounds. And then I let life get a hold of me. And I just went off on something else, And I did something else very successful, but still, I could have done both at the same time. Oh my God, regret's a bitch. Regret is that feeling that you will always have the rest of your life if you don't re-metabolize it and re-perspective, analyze it. That's a bunch of weird words together. To remove your regret. You live with it for the rest of your life. Maybe you just said something bad to someone. And you're like, ugh, God, you can never take that moment back unless you can find them and apologize. But you still did it, So I do have episodes all about time management, season 1. Just go to the website, deepthoughtsradio.com, search on management, and you'll find it. It's back in season 1. It's actually, really pretty good. I mean, that was my whole goal in season 1, was getting all the basics out in life. It's easy making the first 100 episodes, let me tell you. If you have kids, you got a wife, you got a husband, whatever the situation is, you use every spare time of your life. But again, you focus on the goal. You focus on where you want to be. But now, what's the secret to getting anything in life? The first secret is conceiving of it first. I want that. Oh, yeah. You know, when I was a little kid, every little kid wants, say, a Lamborghini. My cousin had a poster of a Countach on his wall. Everybody wanted one. Okay. But, you don't really want it in a sense that you know anything about how to get it. You're a kid. If you want one in your 40s, now you're starting to look at, okay, what's the down payment again? What's the monthly on this? What's the registration cost? What's the upkeep? What's a brake change cost? You're really looking at what it takes to get it done. And then you look at your bills and you look at taxes and you're like, oh my God, I got to make a ton more money than I'm making now. Well, let's just take that for an example. The Huracan is like between $220,000 and $250,000 right now. It's faster than the Aventador, so just get yourself a Huracan. Okay. Let's say that that's your goal, and you're going to give yourself 2 years to get it. Now, it's $20,000 down, $2,500 a month in Orange County. And that's not any of your registration bills. Again, it's about $2,500 to put the license plate on it. It's going to go down a little bit over the years. But then maintenance, well, I don't have any clue what the maintenance is, right? Well, let's say after 2 years, you're not there yet. Now, you can either cash in on your goal, or you can keep going and just say, well, I thought it was going to take me 2 years. Maybe it's going to take me 5 years. You keep going. You keep going. Maybe you're just saving up the whole thing and you're going to go, it's mine. But what if you go, you know what? I really started looking at the burden of owning this car. As much as I'd love it, it's really just I was starstruck. I was infatuated with it. And now I've grown up a little bit. What I really want is just a nice car. And so you go out and get yourself a $60,000 car. Maybe by that time you can pay cash for it, or maybe by that time you pay cash for it and you have 40 more left, or you realize these cars lose so much value, you're just going to lease it. And you got all the money left, and you run off and do something completely different with your life. But you know that you wouldn't have gotten any options in your life had you not stopped and thought bigger. Thinking bigger is a lot of fun. Have you ever put your head down at night and you're a little wound up still, you're not really drifting off into sleep yet, and so you sit there and fantasize about things. Well, what if I did that? What if I did this? What if I was Superman? Whatever. And you start to, feel it for a second. You start to feel maybe having the object. Used to be when I used to buy lottery tickets, I sit in the gas station every once in a while or at home, and I'd look at it. I'd look at the ticket. It hasn't been read off yet by the lotto people. And I think about, oh my God, what if all these numbers, all 7 numbers, what is it, 650 million to 1 comes through on my ticket? It happens, right? How would your life change? All of a sudden now, for the rest of your life, even if you took the payments instead of the lump sum, or the lump sum instead of the payments, which reduces it considerably, and even after taxes, you would never worry about money for the rest of your life. All your kids get to go to Harvard or Caltech or wherever the hell you want to send them. Now you're never going to have to work anymore, so you can go after all of your dreams. You can do anything in this world, and that's where you find out you really don't need a hell of a lot of money to make it happen. I mean, you make $10 million, you get to keep 5. Let's say it's $100,000 a year minimum for any one of you, no matter where you are in the world, to survive. Some of you live in a much cheaper area. That's great. I'm envious of people that grew up in a particular town. You love it. You're going to live there the rest of your life. And it's cheap. It's easy. I've seen a lot of my friends and family who are very skilled. They make tremendous amounts of money, but they choose to live in their hometown or little tiny towns. They pick up everything out of California and they move somewhere that's really, really inexpensive, but they're contracting back to California or somewhere else big. And so they're able to make $150,000 a year and live in an area that only requires you to make 60. And they're just throwing cash in the bank. By the time retirement comes around, they got $500,000 in the bank, and they're like, yeah, Social Security's going to kick in at 75. I'll go the whole distance. Don't care. Stopped working at 60. Kaboom. That's also thinking big. I'm going to give you a metaphorical and literal example of thinking big that I went into. When I started doing artwork as a kid, my big claim to fame, again, was that I could paint like a college kid before my teens, like at 9, 10, 11 sort of thing. But I had painted paintings, that were on walls of bars and all this other stuff. I'd painted, fairly large canvases before. And then I found out I could paint with smoke bombs. Very specifically, Black Cat smoke bombs. Okay. Well, I did some little drawings on the ground. People liked it. And when I came back for 4th of July, could you do another one in front of my house? I was like, yeah, sure. But eventually I got this idea to think literally bigger. And these graffiti artists that do side of buildings, man, wow. I mean, that's thinking big. And what you do as an artist is that you know that you can mess up. You can draw something out of proportion. You can get your colors wrong. You can make a mistake. Everything's kind of right, but it's still a mistake. So the first big mural I did was on this really nice street in my hometown, which was all cement. And a lot of streets in my hometown are either asphalt or bricks, so you can't do this. This is a big slab of cement, and I did this. It's 4th of July, so I did this gigantic, dollar bill. I put the Statue of Liberty where the president was. I put Mount Rushmore off to one side. I did the the soldiers pushing the flag in the ground, which I think was in Korea, or was that Vietnam? I can't remember. But I just decorated this thing like crazy. Took all day to paint with these bombs, and my fingers are burned, I got holes in my skin, and I actually had to spend 3 hours at home with a massive headache because I had super duper heat exposure. The liquid in my head was super duper hot. I did take the right precautions, but I learned something. But I'm drawing this thing, and it's freaky. When you're drawing it, your heart's palpitating because you're thinking, geez, smoke bombs are unforgiving. You don't get to wash it off. In fact, it can rain on that thing for months and months and months and still be there a year later. It's changed colors. It's kind of interesting. So that was my first foyer. Next year I come back and I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to do another big one, but it's going to be a lot cleaner and more interesting. So I did Statue of Liberty's head with their spikes, the big American flag behind it, and I did it on a racquetball court thing. Got in the newspaper. Whoop-de-doo. Huge, though. This thing was 15 feet wide, 9 feet tall, and the whole town was going to be able to see it when they drove by because it's propped straight up. Cool, right? Supposedly, the town was looking for someone to charge for the damage to the paint and the racquetball thing. It was like, nobody plays racquetball. No one even tries to use that thing, but they've been there for decades, and no one's ever used them. So I used it. People were honking, and, they were so happy to see it. The next year, I came back, and I did I did one the same size, but I just did this big eagle and all this other wild stuff. Okay. And I let people paint with me, so had some funny little additions to it, but everyone had a blast, right? But that was me taking a risk. Not everything came out perfect, because I hadn't figured out the science of getting really close to a wall, and then because there was no way to really sketch it on there. I mean, I did use a construction pencil, one of those really flat, long ones, and I lay it in, but my skills aren't up to mega scale. But I had to take the risk first. I'd fly in a few days early. I'd sketch, instead of sketching back in California. That was the dumb thing on my part. So just know that if you have this idea and it's giving you butterflies, it's usually giving you butterflies because you're going to get the opportunity to try it. What if someone wants to do an audition on some American Idol kind of thing? You're going to go up and become a comedian or try it on an open mic night somewhere in your hometown. You got your peers looking at you. You've been practicing at home, but nothing really works until you do it in front of an audience. Even if you use your friends and family, maybe they're laughing because they see more in you than the audience is going to see on a dry run. Take some guts, right? But nothing risked, nothing gained. And there's a big saying that is so true. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. And that is, it sounds like a little saying that's like, oh, thanks for that big piece of wisdom. But I'll tell you what, it's absolutely true. And it's almost true like a cause and effect that the universe guarantees you. How many times have you ever looked at like David Bowie dressed like a woman, dressed like Iggy Stardust or Ziggy Stardust, excuse me, and all these like Kiss going out there with makeup on. All of these crazy, amazing, and I mean crazy in a great way, folks that just blew their whole image out and went on stage, and then they're that person who does that. One of the biggest examples is Andy Kaufman. If you ever see the humor of Andy Kaufman, the comedian and actor, his stand-up routine to this day blows people's minds. His very first Mighty Mouse stuff that turns into the Elvis impression. He did a lot of crazy stuff at the end of his life, but still he just kept thinking bigger and bigger and bigger. At the total expense of, if he failed, it could be the end of his career on any one performance. But this guy kept saying, you know what, I'm going to blow this thing out. He's a very shy guy, but when he got on stage, he lost all of his shyness, and then he could do these amazing performances. Dare to think big, dare to try it, do it. And the universe is, I think it's almost, if I were to write like a being John Malkovich kind of movie, but instead of having people inside of his brain like Woody Allen did a couple times, it's the ambassadors of the universe looking down on us, right? And, you know, they're looking around, trying to find someone interesting, right? And there's David Bowie putting a dress on. And, you know, I think he was at least bisexual in his lifetime, but he may have had a little extra help with his natural orientation being kind of anywhere it landed. But they look at that guy and they're like, look at this dude. Oh, wow. Look at it. He's painting his face. He's doing his hair red now. He's this other space guy. Oh, he's this different dude with the Chinatown album, right? Or China Girl album, excuse me. And this guy keeps getting rewarded and rewarded because they're willing to do stuff that no one else is going to do. It almost entertains the universe. The universe is like, you know, it's like those old movies like Clash of the Titans, the old one back in the 80s. And it's Zeus looking down on the Colosseum, and we're all the little pawns down below, right? Like Mongo said, we're only pawns in life. And they bless you. Kiss. My Lord. I mean, they're dressed up. Gene Simmons is doing a demon thing. The other guys are just being cool. Ace Frehley's a space guy. Peter Criss is a cat guy. Paul just has a star on his eye. Kaboom. The music is like everything they made that succeeded is like an anthem of this country for that particular era, right? Now, I'm going to draw right now. Let's say you're a Deep Thoughts listener and you're still here. We know that we talk about things that aren't commonly believed by everyone in the world. From moon missions to the shape of the earth, whatever. What's interesting is when you jump off on some of these things and you're willing to start being public about your opinion, you're thinking big. It is. You're risking everything, your credibility, everything. So you're the kind of person that's willing to take chances, and that's an archetype of your character. As a human being, you take chances. You know, when you develop a soldier in the world, the soldier is willing to fight any war. It doesn't matter. And I know that's a kind of a morbid example, but they're willing to defend their country against whatever threats are perceived and communicated to them, whether it be a zombie apocalypse where they could get bitten and turn into a zombie. I don't think any of our soldiers in mass would run away from that war. They'd be like, yeah, all right, we understand. Just teach us how to kill these things and give us equipment to keep us safe, and we'll go clean up. Risk takers. Living bigger than life. Imagine the perspective difference. I mean, I mentioned this in the Dimensional Realities one, and it's still something that's starting to really ring true in my mind as a profound thing that I think we're all overlooking if we don't have this happen directly to us. I've got a lot of friends that served in war, from Army Rangers to Navy SEALs to other folks, right? They have seen and done things that I will virtually never do in my entire lifetime. They have succeeded at some of the riskiest stuff, jumped out of planes, parachuted down to air bases in Iraq, and had to deal with all the soldiers that were there, which are elite guards, so they're the most trained guard, being shot at the ground with anti-air guns that are supposed to take planes out of the sky, but then these 20 cal rounds are going by their faces, turn them inside out in a second if they get hit. They see their buddies get hit and they keep going. And then that guy, let's say the dude's like 28 years old or dudette, they come home, they go to a coffee shop. And they're being revered these days instead of crapped on like a Vietnam thing. But they come home and they go into a coffee shop and they look around the room and they see just kids their age that have been in the town that they're in their whole life. They never shipped out anywhere. They've never had their life threatened. They've never taken a life due to war. What would be the perspective difference of that individual? Some of you are those individuals. There's this massive gap that you know about that they have no clue. And even if they might be able to say, I can only imagine, they have no clue. Even their imagining doesn't really drill it home. I got a pretty good mind. I wouldn't claim to have much more than a tiny double-digit percentage, and I would probably be patting myself on the back a little too hard to be able to go, yeah, I know what it's like to be, in the middle of the night, some Marine with Rangers and all other guys around them in different divisions, and they're all coordinating, and they're having to clean up some airbase or something crazy, right? And there's missions 50 times more difficult than those. And our brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers, best friends, they all go off and have done those things. You can get inspiration from those people with your little goal here in the country. You're sitting there going, well, I don't think I can do this or that. You kind of, you're going to have to fight your whiny nature, and that's just normal. But they were able to do damn near the impossible. And these people are around you constantly, okay? Now, let me throw some cautionary things out there when you're setting your steps to go get this big thing of yours. There's a couple kisses of death, okay, that you don't want to fall into. It's really easy. I've made a couple episodes about these sorts of things. One of the number one things you'll hear a lot, especially on the internet with these get-rich-fast schemes, is they lay down this portfolio of people that have made tremendous amounts of money with this thing. And you may even know someone. Well, this dude, he just put some money in Bitcoin and boom, boom, boom. Got a very close friend of mine who's done extremely well with Bitcoin. I was able to tell him the other day, I said, look, I said, you know that if I wanted to be in your shoes, I can't be in your shoes. You were there when Bitcoin dropped, and you were so smart that you invested in something that looked like it might be a bunch of crap, but it isn't, right? All right. But you'll also, so that's one realm, which I call it the lottery ticket life, right? You're seeing someone do something that's miraculous, and it's first come, first serve, and it's usually out by the third person that walks up the line, right? So don't fall for that. Go for something that is actually very realistic. Hey, if those opportunities come around and you want to take a risk, you're going to have to hedge your bets, right? You can't put all of your money in Bitcoin if you need money to operate on. Not everybody takes it just yet. That's probably going to change. Okay, good. So hedge your bets with that kind of thing. The other thing that the Millionaire Man didn't mention in his class, and there's been books written about this, which is the opportunity of a lifetime happens to people sometimes. And they just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and it all falls together, and they make a tremendous amount of money doing that thing. Now, every single one of you can be one of those people. I'm not saying that you can't, but you need to understand that you can't necessarily set the goal to go get those miraculous situations. What you can do is build your skill set so intensely and so broadly and diversified that as things present themselves, you got skills in that, you got skills in this, you got skills in this other thing, and when you drop on it, you can get in deeper than anyone else. very quickly. An example would be, I think Steve Jobs is a better example, and I also think that Bezos is a better example than rip everything off Bill Gates. But there's even a logic to being a rip-off artist. But Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, they see the bubble coming of amazing consumption of personal computers. This is going to be a wave. They were going to these little clubs in Cupertino and Los Altos and watching people buy kits and set them up. And Wozniak's like, hey man, I can build one of these things pre-made if you can just sell them. Steve goes off and lands a deal, I think, to sell 50 of these things. They're building them all in his house and testing out all the chips to make sure they worked. They hawked a VW van to pay for the actual cover and make it look cool eventually. Right place, right time, worked their asses off. Didn't necessarily have to do the 10 years in the office thing, because within 2 years they had such a hot item on their hands, both of them were multimillionaires. Original engineering for the computer, original engineering for the software that's on the computer. Okay, go over to Bezos. He's the guy that everyone loves to hate, and I think most of it's jealousy. He has a political, it seems he has a political disposition that I am very much different from. But the dude back in 1992, 93, saw the internet coming, said, oh my God. He had some hookup with books. He could sell books. I don't know if he had a bookstore before or whatever. I haven't looked up the guy and done a deep dive yet. But the guy said, look, if I can just figure out how to take a credit card online, I can sell books because I can ship them directly to you. Well, the banks weren't even ready for merchant accounts. Like you can just get a WordPress site, the WooCommerce plugins, all through your bank or PayPal or whatever. You can set it all up online. You don't even have to call anybody. You have to have your bank account, of course. And then you can hook it up today. No big deal. 20 years later. Well, for him, it was a big deal. He fought tooth and nail. And so he sells books forever, finally gets his pipeline down, and goes, man, I can sell anything. So he expands his offerings first, and then he realizes, I can offer this service to everyone in the world. Look at eBay. Everyone's selling stuff out of their house, but they're using this, Windows NT platform that this guy wrote in his basement in like Mountain View to sell products all around the world, and he gets a commission. Wow. Thinking big, right? Okay, Robert Kiyosaki, guy wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think I've only mentioned this once out of 450 episodes. He wrote another book that is probably it's his opus. I mean, it is the best thing he's ever done, and everyone needs to read it. Just get it on tape. If you don't read, you're busy. It's called Cash Quadrant. And you look at the cover, and the cover has an E, an S, a B, and an I. You are in one of those four categories at any one point in your life. And to the degree you understand which category you're in, you can build your goals and think bigger in a much better, more efficient fashion. What do they stand for? E means you're an employee of someone else. You're working at a corporation, a department store. They run your life. They determine your hours. You are not after any of your own goals. You are after someone else's goals. If I went to Apple and worked as an engineer, my cousin is a chief engineer in Apple right now. I just learned that kid works for Apple. Now, Apple's kind of cool. Internally, they'll kind of inspire them to think up their own things, but in the end, it becomes a product of Apple. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with any one of these categories if you're happy, right? Now, the other quadrant is an S. An S is a sole proprietor business. You work out of your house, you don't have any employees, but you're doing something for money, and it's paying the bills. Okay, that's like me being a writer. I'm an S right now. I've definitely been an E. I'm currently an S. I've been an S several times in my life. Next one over is a B. The B is a business owner. Now you have probably an LLC, S Corp, or C Corp. You have employees. So now you are becoming the thing that creates the E's. Okay, now just think about the career paths just with those three right away. You're an employee right now and you want to up your game. Well, you probably want to become a S before you become a B, because you need to get a product line together, find a service or product you're going to give to someone else for money. You figure it all out. You figure out the pipeline. You control the quality experiences between you and the customer. Let's say you want to learn how to be a plumber, or you're going to be a termite guy. You're going to do it by yourself first, because if you don't do it by yourself, you get an employee, you may not know how to train, you may not know what the process should be, and the whole thing will blow up in your face if you go too quickly. When you become a B, hopefully you've been the other two, and it's all old school for you, except that now you're going to be a salesperson your whole life. Your job is to go find the business. And you need to have people underneath you that you trust, and take advice from Steve Jobs. Hire only A players. What's the definition of an A player? They're potentially better than you at everything. And you got to have the balls to hire someone that's better than you, because they tend to go on autopilot. A lot of people have gigantic egos when they run their businesses, whether or not they even recognize it or not. I talked to a guy earlier this year, see if I could work for him. Loved his company. That's why I agreed to interview at his place. Total narcissist. Thinks small. Specifically thinks small. Has made tens of millions of dollars, but he thinks like a little ant. It's funny. I could just see the end of his business just talking to him. And he had already reached his threshold. Hilarious, right? Don't be that guy. And I got a lot of episodes in season 1 in the sort of business area that'll help you be a B, and I can save you a lot of time, man. I can save you, how to allocate stock options, what type of corporation to create, all that good stuff. Now, I saved I for last, because the I is the most misunderstood role that you can have when thinking big. What's an I? Well, the layman's sort of understanding of an investor, which is what I stands for, is that they kind of sit around waiting for opportunities to be brought to them, and then they do that sort of Shark Tank thing, where they look around at it and they're like, how much do you need? Okay, how fast do you need it? And you're going to do 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds of seeding money into the company, and you're getting more and more shares until you probably own the company by the time it's all over, but you're really waiting for other people to have dreams before you can have any money back, any return of investment or ROI, right? But that's not what an I is. That's the side job of an I, to sit around and wait for things to be brought to them. A real I is a combination of pretty much all the letters together with one little change. You go out and make those opportunities possible from nothing, right? Give an example. When I founded with Richard Taylor, 3Space VR, which was our theater technology that was, again, it's going to replace your movie theater with a projector with a screen that is LED, high definition, direct LED technology. And, well, Richard had this idea for a while, and some people had the idea, but no one ever moved on it. That's that's the big difference between sitting around and dreaming about it and getting it to happen. We got a screen put together. We got it hosted inside of the basement floor of the 3rd floor company, the Previs Hollywood company, downtown LA, just down from the Academy, just down from the Peterson Car Museum and the Academy of Arts museum that's being built down there. And we toured 130 of the top Hollywood people through it. But now there was a requirement with replacing any movie theater screen, which was 3-dimensional images, because, hey, every once in a while a movie comes in, it's 3D. You can't have a technology that's not going to do 3D. Well, no one had really done it before. So we pushed the manufacturer of 2 or 3 different technologies to work harder, to give us the methodology to flicker the screen with active glasses, realizing that active glasses are about, anywhere from $35 to $50 a pair, and the only theater that's going to host such a thing would be like a very closed system where you go in, you're given your glasses, they have to be charged up, they're very expensive, you have to figure out how many were going to get broken because they're very fragile. So we knew that that wasn't going to be the end product, but this would sell the technology and the idea to Hollywood in general. So we brought through all these special effects studios, folks. I mean, we're blowing minds every day for at least 6 to 8 hours a day. Okay. What did we need to really get it done right? We needed passive 3D, those cardboard glasses that you have. But direct LED can't do right now passive 3D. So I started working with another gentleman who understood it completely, who unfortunately was connected to some folks that did not understand it at all. And we developed some film that we could put on top of an LED. Got it all the way down to 1.9 millimeter LEDs, which 10 feet away is photorealistic, man. And gorgeous. Unbelievable. So anything bigger than that, no problem. So we covered it with the film such that every individual LED light had left and right eye and a spherical 3D filter. We invented what we needed to get done. Problem: LEDs are simply too expensive right now. The theaters would cost too much. The other problem: the technology that broadcasts it to the screen isn't secure. So I completely laid out this entire technological plan that would lock this image down straight to the LED itself, totally encrypted to the LED. But that was going to cost a tremendous amount of money and need some time to develop. My investor, who's the money man, he was looking at the pipeline of all the different manufacturers and realized that the one guy that could make the screen the way we needed it, that we eventually did get the film on at one point, his company's completely unreliable. He was unreliable as a person. And so there's no other manufacturer out there that can make an LED printed circuit board that could have the film on it. So we're all stuck behind the 8 ball constantly. And then Hollywood needs to buy into it so that they'll authorize movies to be on it. Remember when you put in that DVD, it gives you a big FBI warning? Well, there's an organization behind that called DCI that controls all this. Well, they're getting better, but they've been some old dogs for a really long time. They're looking at it. It'll take 5 to 10 years for them just to get the security protocols authorized for the FBI. And the idea of this screen was that we're going to bring it around you 220 degrees so you had peripheral vision for the first time in a movie in 3D. So if an object a big tiger came up on your right side in the Jungle Book, you would freak out because it's in your peripheral vision. You look backwards because it's 210 degrees back. The screen never stops for your eyeball. You can walk right out of the back of the theater. It would have been amazing. And it will be amazing once we get through all these hurdles. Maybe I'll reintroduce myself to the technology, but I'll be 60 before it happens. That's an I. That's thinking big. That's inventing something. But there's risks, right? Now here's the good news. The good news is the more tangible your goal is and the more personable it is to you, the less risk you're actually taking. Let me give an example. I had sat at home, like I said, 4 hours a day for a couple of years to get my skills up on the internet to transition without losing any money, relatively speaking. Okay, well, what if the internet flopped? Okay, no big deal. Put all my ducks in that, or some of my ducks in that, row over there. Didn't work out. Well, I'm still an expert at this other stuff. I was already diversified. You can have that same sort of parachute when you're taking your personal risks. Now, I recently posted on our Facebook page this just random video I found watching YouTube real late at night. And the video is about a guy who got an electron microscope, which I had to go look this up because I've been told the electron microscopes of a very high definition, like molecule level electron microscopes you can't own personally. They're too expensive anyway, but you have to register with the government through a university what the hell you're looking for because they don't want you just messing around. It's really interesting. But this guy had one that could look at a phonographic needle in the groove of a wax record. And it was utterly brilliant. I mean, you should go look this up. Just go to our locked Facebook group. The link is on deepthoughtsradio.com. And check this out, because then he looked at the grooves that are in a CD, grooves that are in a DVD player, but he also pulled out the first RCA home theater system. I remember these things just before Laserdisc came out. And, Beta had already succeeded, 3/4 inch definitely succeeded in broadcasting, and VHS was catching up. And so everybody was going for this cheaper, smaller, more compact cartridge, you could use like we all did, right? But they had this cartridge that was flat, like a record. And inside, they had developed this amazing technology. It looked like a record, sort of, but if you pulled it out, which you're never supposed to do, and you shined it in the light, it was like a black sort of rainbow mirror. I mean, it's tremendous. And what they did was embed inside the surface of this record, as I understand it, a positive and negative charge such that it could create digital data that then, I think it's digital, it's sort of an analog digital combination to project a movie into your TV at super high definition. And of course, Laserdisc is what Blu-ray is today. It's just a much bigger version of it. But RCA, I guess, spent from the late 60s to the early 80s developing this technology before it actually got into the living rooms of people. And so there was this paradigm shift that was going on. Both platforms failed. Laserdisc failed and this RCA thing failed. However, the RCA thing was, as the guy said in the video, was dead on arrival because it was cumbersome, expensive to just duplicate the thing, let alone for you to buy it. And it worked well, but there were alternatives that were just as good. So they lost everything. Had my investor given my partner and I, Richard, $10 million to build this company, we could have stretched it and probably put something together. Would have been more active than passive, but we could have some nice, fine theaters where you would go and pay $50 a ticket to see a movie in a way that you have never seen it in your life. By the way, 3D on an LED screen is the most breathtaking thing you've ever seen in your life. And I've said this several times in shows, but wait for it. If you want to start eating healthy so that you can see it in the future, it's probably a decent reason to do so. But we would have run into the manufacturer having all kinds of ethical problems. And so we'd have to go to some other LED manufacturer and hope that we can get something similarly made without running into the other guy's patents. It's a detailed process. It's painstaking. It hurts. It makes partners yell at each other every once in a while, and it's really not personal. It's just everyone venting their frustration. But that's sometimes the price you pay when you think big. And I'm giving you this painful scenario of my own personal life so that when you retreat back to a B or an S, it seems much easier. You're like, oh, woof, at least I'm not making that crap, right? And so I'm hoping this sort of gets you to think about things in your life. And, the thing is if you hear this and you're like, well, I really don't have anything I really want to do. I'm totally happy, and maybe it's not glamorous what I'm doing, but I'm happy. Man, oh man, you need to know your humble narrator thinks that you are already there. You're just listening to the rest of us try to figure it out. You can hit the lottery and be Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and create the Apple computer, but you can also hit the lottery and your life is selling fishing poles, man. And you're just happy as a clam. Doesn't matter. If you're happy and you know it, stick to it, right? Just be aware the careers today will very often have expiration dates that no one knows the end of that. They don't know when it's going to take place. Ask anybody in 1985 if they thought Betamax was going to disappear in 5 years. My dad wouldn't have believed it. I probably wouldn't have believed it either. We had Beta primarily in my house. We also had VHS, but Beta was better. It was smaller. It was a nice, smaller cassette. It was all done with Sony technology, and Sony's root. Sony is like famous for creating technology and then hoarding it and then losing. It's just, wow. It's really sad. But now, there's this other thing. As I close up here, I made the episode about the fact that your mind erases time if it's boring. Well, if you love what you do, you're never going to have that feeling. You're just living in one nice, great day. There's no such thing as mundane. You like what you do. So don't worry about it if you're in that state. But let's say you are in a career that, in 5-10 years, probably I'll need to switch to something else. And so the cool thing is you kind of go around life looking around. What do you do for a living? Well, how hard is it to get in that? You got any positions? How hard is it to train? And you just keep looking around. YouTube, oh my Lord, that is the new university. I think one could get, depending on exactly what we're talking about here, not quite a PhD level education in something, but for these careers that don't need PhDs, like say special effects, you don't need a PhD. You don't even need a degree. Just get really good at something at a broadcast level quality, meaning movie quality, television quality, which is all 4K. These tools, it doesn't even matter. You can just dial in what resolution you want and your stuff comes out at that resolution, right? Our intro's in 4K. It spices up your life. It gives you sort of this, I don't know what I'm going to be this decade kind of thing. And, you get to the end of your life where you're going to retire, chill out, and you look back at your life and you're like, man, yeah, I was a musician for that 10 years. I did video games for that 25 years. I did this, I did that, blah, blah, blah. And so at the end of your life, you're kind of like, yeah, I got no regrets. Yeah, I missed a bunch of careers I could have hunkered down in. Maybe I would have made no money in it. Maybe your opinion completely changes and you're like, man, I'm glad I didn't go into that. So instead of perceiving anything as fear, perceiving anything as an obstacle that's not a fun obstacle, just the more you conquer things, the easier it gets. It sets a precedence in your mind that you have this capability. One of the greatest examples I've ever heard about a guy walking into a room and getting a whole group of people, 12 people, to do something they never thought they could do was Steve Jobs walking in the room, I think in 81 or 82. He put a book on the table and he goes, that's it right there. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you see the footprint this thing has on the table? They said, yeah. And he goes, that's how big I want this computer to be. You can build it straight up, but no higher than this, no wider, no deeper. And it became the Macintosh, the first 1984 Macintosh that released. They thought they couldn't do it. The PC, the personal computer being released by IBM and all the other computers were like these keyboard shapes. Of course, he did allow the keyboard to be attached to it through a little coil wire. So that helped. But they ended up making the motherboard go up vertically on the inside of the Macintosh. And there was one at the base too. So it was sort of like this L-shaped thing. But now, what is the configuration of a Windows machine in most cases? No one has them lying down. We haven't had them lying down for 20 years. They're all vertical. Well, it's kind of cool. The Macintosh was one of the first computers to make something vertical. Now, technically, the Cray computer was very vertical, but it was also sideways and upside down, all kinds of stuff. But when challenged, it's amazing what the mind can do. Just remember, the universe has your back. But you got to be a good critic of your own capabilities, right? There's plenty of tone-deaf kids going into, American Idol auditions over and over and over again. Some of them get better over time, even though they're not qualified to get on the show, but you can at least see the delta. And some of them are just as tone-deaf the first day as they are 5 years later. So make sure that you can sing in tune. And that's just a metaphor for everything you do. A lot of things either work or they don't work, and that's what's great. You want to build circuitry? Well, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. Later, you can refine it, make it smaller, better, whatever, use less power, get faster chips, miniaturize, whatever. It's a process, and it's fun if you're in control and if it's part of that little goal you've got in your mirror in your bathroom. So, there you go. Hopefully that was helpful. But if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. I'm going to make it a short bumper today. There's 2 video, at least 2 or 3 audio. There's 3 social media. There's 2 ways to donate directly, and there's a couple little products I want you to have. Take a look at those. And there's the all-new remastered Season 1. You will not find Season 1 on this channel. I just gotta keep saying that so no one says anything. Now that I've been saying it, I haven't been getting any comments about where these videos are, so that's good. And I'm getting a lot of comments on the Season 1 episodes. And again, they still work if you've got them embedded somewhere. It's just I don't put them live because they got all kinds of copyright strikes on them. So anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over and out.